Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here and welcome to Starting Out Bright. I am Noreen Savage, and in case we haven't met before, I just want to tell you very quickly how I got to be where I am right now. I started on this journey in July of 2019 after I had a chance Facebook meeting with my friend Lori. She posted that she lost 57 pounds on a program called Bright Line Eating. And if anybody wanted any information, just private message her. And I couldn't get my fingers to fly fast enough across the keyboard to chat with her. But when I found out about the 4 bright lines, and if you're new to bright line eating, they're no sugar, no flour, 3 meals a day, so no snacking, and weighed and measured portions, I thought, no way, there is no way I could do that. But we got together for lunch, and again, I still was not convinced. I just didn't know if I could do it. And eventually I did get going with the program, and I promised myself that if I lasted 1 year with Bright Line Eating, I would do the same thing that my friend Lori did. I would post on my private Facebook page, and I would help anybody I could. And just before that, I had a deep spiritual experience just telling me, nudging me that I could do more than that. I could connect people who I had met through the Bright Line unofficial pages with people who had inspired me through the journey. And that's why we're here, is hopefully for some hope and some inspiration and a little information. And I will tell you that one of the people who I met along the way is Lydia Pattison. And Lydia coaches emotional overeaters. Does that ring a bell? It did for me. And I would just sit back and look at the wisdom on some of the posts that she made, especially on We Eat Bright with Lines, but I know she's in other groups too. And I thought, how kind is that to at least, try to coach us through that. So it's really a pleasure today that Lydia could join me all the way from Australia. Lydia, it's so good to see you. And you're unmuted, right?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Is it clicking through? Can you see me? Is it?
Yes, I can see you. Oh, wait. Okay. Yes, I can see you. Great. As the speaker. Can everybody see her as the speaker? Okay, good.
Right. Oh, that's good. Yay.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Lydia, it's interesting. You coach emotional overeaters. Mm-hmm. But you yourself, we chatted the other day, and you yourself shared that you had some of the same things going on. Could you take us back to a little bit about your story before you found Bright Line Eating?
Yeah. So I probably spent, let's think, would have been, well, I probably would have been an emotional eater all my life. We talked about this a little bit. And I think it was probably more boredom, that started my emotional eating when I was quite young. And then it was kind of a stress release. And I had a problem with just, being overweight most of my life, but actually only when I look back, probably only about 20 pounds, but it was a lot of stress for me and a lot of weight gain and loss. And it actually weighed really heavy on my mind. But I was kind of okay with that level, with that lifestyle of dieting and then gaining and then dieting and gaining. And then I had a kind of a health crisis in 2016 when I blew out some discs in my neck, and then I put on 30 pounds in a very short period of time. I was on Lyrica for nerve pain, and I don't know if any of you have tried that, but it's a fairly intense experience, and you really can put on weight. And I found myself in a situation where I was a lot heavier than I had ever been. And I was looking for solutions for that, because I'd sort of made peace with, that weight gain that I'd had. but I didn't want to go any higher, and I wanted to get rid of that. So then I really worked on looking for solutions, and I found basically some of the lines myself. So through my coaching school, I've been taught about meals and sort of no sugar, no flour. And I found the Overeaters, I think it's the Overeaters Anonymous list. And so essentially I had started following meals, quantities, and no sugar, no flour myself. And that's how I actually lost my weight, was really just applying those.
So there was a spot where I don't know if the audio went out a little bit, but for what I heard you say is that you had a kind of a constant 20 pounds up from what you considered to be, a bright size body.
Size. That's right.
So, this goes back to the thing that I've said many times. There are people in this program that looking at them, you'd think, well, they don't have a problem. 20 pounds does not seem like a lot. But what I heard you also say is this was weighing on your mind and you were constantly trying to take that off. But then was it a medicine that you said that's the part I didn't hear.
Basically I had to have surgery on my spine. I ruptured some discs. And I was in really very bad pains, nerve pain. And I had to take Lyrica, which is a drug that basically works with nerve pain so that you're not in constant agony. But it does actually make you gain weight. And that's when I put on like a 30, maybe 40 pounds, I'm not sure. It was so dramatic, the weight gain, that it was like unlike anything I'd experienced. So then when I recovered from that, I had surgery and recovered, I was left with this weight gain. Yeah. So that's when I was really motivated to do something about it.
But then you found kind of a plan with Overeaters Anonymous through that.
Yeah, it was that plan, and then, but it was basically, essentially, I was following, bright lines, essentially, which worked really well for me. And I lost the weight. At the time I was coaching, general coaching, and then I started to focus on emotional overeating because I had actually learned to apply that plan and to follow through and to have the ability to totally manage what I ate. So it was like, the promised land.
Well, that's fantastic. You really fell into it then with the coaching ahead of time, and then yourself actually understanding the emotional eating. But then having something that I think is really more common than we think is a medicine of some kind or just even a life challenge like the pain can put you in a different kind of lifestyle. For me, that was, I began a retail store. My stress went off the charts. My eating time went crazy. I started getting home like at 9-10 p.m. and having full meals. And so I gained 100 pounds over like 5 years. It was very rapid. But so I understand that lifestyle change, whether it comes from eating, because of, pain or meds or whatever. But when we were talking the other day, I found it really interesting that you have also some background in why we eat what we eat. As far as you worked with a company or something?
Basically, my job for 25 years was working as a consultant for food manufacturers and basically all the companies that are in supermarkets. And I would do in-depth emotional research to try and make brands as appealing as possible. So I probably worked in kind of every category in the supermarket to look at how products are marketed. So I helped make products more appealing. And so for me to say that you're an emotional eater is actually just factual, right? Because I would help sell, chocolate brands sell chocolate, soft drink brands sell soft drinks. So now and in that process, we really deal with emotions, like selling things in a way, in a powerful way, is basically making them emotionally very appealing. So that's why, for example, a packet of Doritos has a lot of bright colors on it, and isn't just, you don't see the chips themselves. You see I'm sorry about mentioning the foods, but so if you take that packet and you put it side by side with a pack that isn't brightly colored, the unbrightly colored pack is a lot less appealing, and that's because it's speaking to that emotional need for stimulation and excitement. So when we're feeling bored, we reach for something that's stimulating and exciting. When we want reassurance, we might reach for something that is sweet and creamy, So
Yeah.
each brand has its own emotional thing that we're actually marketing towards, right? So when you say you're an emotional eater, if you're shopping in the center of the supermarket, you're looking at products that are really designed to meet your emotional needs, whether you're bored or whether you want reassurance or comfort. They literally are comfort food. So I think, when we want to avoid becoming emotional eaters, we want to look at foods that aren't going to trigger that kind of behavior, that aren't literally designed to trigger that behavior. Because that's basically, I'm here to tell you, they are designed
They
because I
are
was part of
by
the team that did
design.
it.
They are
So yeah,
by
they're by
design
design.
ready to enhance,
Yeah, to make
and
you, yeah,
that does make perfect sense. If
yeah,
you're
yeah,
bored and it's like, let's try something risky like the hottest Dorito.
yeah, that's
But you
right.
said
And
something about salty foods too, right?
yeah,
What
salty
did,
food. Sorry, what were you going to say?
no, go ahead.
Yes, so salty snacks, that whole category of foods, and I'm using some technical terms here, but the salty snack category is all about stimulation, and typically somebody will look for that when they're a bit bored or they're, and sweeter foods tend to be for when you want emotional reassurance or comfort or indulgence. There's sort of different things that marketers will be working towards. So it's not a mystery that that this is going on to me, because I was literally, and also we would quantify this. So this is not just my opinion. We would literally go into the market and quantify, like put numbers, how much market share was in indulgence and how much market share was in family enjoyment. Like we'd have
Oh,
all these occasions and we'd actually come out with the numbers. So you are being specifically manipulated if you are buying something that's in a box in the center of the supermarket. It's not, it's important to be informed. This is not, these things don't happen by chance. And everything on a product in the center of the supermarket has been optimized. So that means they make it as best it possibly can to appeal to you. So they will go through and we will test it with groups of people. We will put big surveys out and we will actually make the product better and better each time and test
mhm.
different options for what the packaging would look like. And then there's another specialty which I'm not even involved in, which is flavoring. And that's
Wow.
so specialized that we do sensory testing. People come into a lab and we test products side by side to get the absolute best flavor. And we were talking the other day about, like, for example, ketchup being a particular, why ketchup is so appealing is because it's a combination of salty and sweet, which isn't found kind of in nature. And it's got a bliss point, which is this point that just kind of is perfect. And it's the artificial balance between the two that makes it actually pretty kind of hard to resist. And if you're an
Yeah.
addictable person, or if you're a person who struggles with emotional overeating, these are foods that are just going to be a problem with you,
Right.
unless you have dealt with that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just quite, I was taken aback by that when you were actually saying, I worked on the other end of this, and thinking, wow, what a education on that, to
Yeah.
understand that besides all the dopamine rush and all that kind of stuff, we're dealing with marketing. And you talk
Yeah.
about like the finding the bliss point. I like to bake, or I used to bake, and I wanted to have whatever I made as sensational as possible for those occasions that I made it. So you can't blame the marketers either. That they're in
Yeah.
the job to sell. So, it's just kind of fascinating. I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting.
It is
But
interesting. And I think, if it wasn't a culture where our food if it was if our whole culture wasn't so food disordered, we wouldn't have a problem with it. But
yeah,
because, we're allowed to, I think our food culture has been so disrupted that
yeah,
that if we're relying on food emotionally, we become weakened and then we just use it more and more, right?
right.
So, and I think Bright Lines actually does make it, uh, makes it clear what a normal eating pattern would be. And it allows
Mhm.
us to just adopt one normal eating pattern that probably was what we were eating like 100 years ago before marketing came into play. And there was a question there I see someone had.
Yeah, we'll, in fact, I encourage everybody to just put questions in the chat as we go along too. I do have a couple questions though, as people asked me this week, and also that I saw questions and even things that you have brought up on posts that you made in some of the groups. One of them that was interesting to me was about your cultural experience in France not too long ago. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, one of the things that I was interested in was like, I'm always interested in how we got to this place that we're at with food, because basically now 70% of us are either, overweight. Within that 40% of us are obese, right? So, and that's growing year on year. There's no question about that going up. All the government statistics say that's the case. Yet if you went back, say 50, 100 years ago, only 10% of us were overweight, right? So what happened in the time? There's lots of different theories about that, but as a marketer, and a food manufacturer, you can see that everything has changed pretty dramatically in terms of like the rise of snack foods, the increase in portion sizes. I mean, just the massive disruption in terms of what I would call intact food culture. And so when I was living in France, I noticed I was married to a French person at the time, and I had little kids, and I was actually literally living at some of the time in my mother-in-law's house. And what I noticed was that they had very strict rules about food and a very intact food culture. And I would see it when I went to everyone's house. They would all be doing the exact same thing. Like, and I would lose about a kilogram, which is like a couple of pounds a month there. And I felt like I was eating all the time. And what was happening there was you ate every meal at the table together. You never had snacks, or I never saw any of my family go to a cupboard and take out a snack or stand up eating. Like, I have no recollection of ever seeing anyone do that. So it's you would always be sitting at a table. The bells of the village would ring at 12 and I'd be walking across the village and you'd hear the church bells ringing, and people would say to you, bon appetit, because they were sure that exactly 12 you would be going to sit down and eat your lunch. There would be no question. You'd walk past someone's house and they would be all eating lunch together at the same time. And wow. So the thing that I find so fascinating about this is that this essentially is the kind of, people reject things like bright line because they think it's too rigid, but actually that's where we would have been 100 years ago. And we still see that, like in places like France, where they still have these very strong rules about how one eats,
and actually, being in America, I grew up on a farm, and we did exactly that. We had a breakfast together, we had lunch together, because people who worked on the farm would come in and have a lunch, and we had dinner together. And so, and we weren't having artificial snacks at all. I mean, we would have an apple like at night, plus popcorn, which, is not a bright line, but at the same time, it was one of those more wholesome snacks than something else. But yeah, so I think that we've just drifted away from that. And who knows, maybe this will come back full steam as more and more people really become more acquainted with this lifestyle and think this isn't so odd, really, when you think about it. What's odd is just grazing all day.
Oh yeah, that is not, it's not good. And it's interesting that you say, I mean, I think as long as it's kind of like as long as it's got this, there's rules, strong rules, I think that's the really valuable point of the whole thing, is that it's not so much the specific, but I mean, although I think there is a lot in the specifics, is like if you were having an apple after dinner and that was all that was allowed and some popcorn, then that would be, you would fall, there's still strong boundaries, like you're still having a boundary there. But one of the interesting things I watched, we got Disney Plus, and I watched Pollyanna, which I haven't watched in years, and they had a thing about the fair. And at the fair, in Pollyanna, you know what they're selling? They did have cake, but they were selling hot corn on the cob and watermelon slices were the treats. and you realize how far we've come from,
Right.
you know, like those
Yes.
are what kids were lining up for, was
Yeah.
like,
Very interesting. Yeah.
it,
Times have changed, but again, who knows? They may go back to some of this as more and more people demand, food. Like, what is it at one of the restaurants that I found that they now offer or cauliflower rice as an option. And I'm thinking,
mm,
okay, we're making headway. So I've got a couple of
definitely.
things though. Another question is from someone who is saying, why do I keep putting off starting? What
Oh,
what is the emotion behind that? Or how do you deal with someone, or but how do you coach somebody who I just cannot get started? I don't know if it's perfectionism or what. Um, what do you
yeah,
say
I
to
think,
them?
well, there's a lot of things in that. There's a lot of reasons why you want to really look at what you're telling yourself about starting. So, it's always about, being aware of what's going on in your brain and noticing like what your thoughts are about starting. Like, are you going to feel like you're deprived? Are you just notice all the resistance that you have? And that's the first place, is just being aware of that resistance and any resistant thoughts you have and really exploring them. And sometimes it's just, there's just that inertia, like that kind of, we don't want to move forward. But once we do get like a little bit of impetus, we've started, right? So we just kind of have to flip into the positive. So I think like the one bright day is one of the ways that we can get that momentum started. So just getting a little bit of reminding yourself how good it feels to not be tired all day long, and to not be
Mhm.
thinking about food all day long, and to just have started the process and getting back on track. So for some people, I think if you're really struggling, just try writing down your food and getting one day under your belt. That's just such an important thing, because then your brain will have a little bit of evidence. And as I think Susan says, there's a part of your brain that observes that, and I've read this other places, that your self-esteem actually comes from a separate part of your brain that actually is observing what you do, not what you say, right? So the first
Mhm.
day that you followed your food plan, then you start to get a little bit of momentum. But the first thing is just to really explore what is your resistance and what are your fears, and just to write them down. And when you see them on paper, it's kind of like they're a lot less scary. You're just like, oh, well, no, I can manage those feelings.
So when someone is saying, one word that I caught you say just now is the word observe.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it brings me to a time when I work as an administrative assistant, and I got the good fortune of one year. There was a coach for whatever. We could have like efficiency coach, whatever. And I was working with this person for that, but I'm like, I'd kind of like some coaching about, I'm overweight, I was 270 pounds at the time. And she said, well, okay, do this for me. When you go home tonight, just observe yourself, like as if you're standing above yourself, and just make no judgment. Just follow yourself around and see what you do. And it's kind of going back to that. So I did that. And
Mm,
I had to promise that I would make no judgment on myself. I walked in the house and I went right to the cupboard. And then from the cupboard, I went to the refrigerator. And in all this triangle of where I was going, I was eating, just picking up this, picking up that. Now, mind you, I had had a great lunch and I was going to have dinner within an hour that my husband was cooking. So it wasn't even like I had to do it. And I knew it was going to be a great dinner. And I thought, this is the oddest thing. When did I start doing this? I was literally shocked that I was doing it. And day after day, I was doing that. And it occurred to me that when I started the store that I had, a retail shop, my whole habits changed so much. When I got home like 9:30 or so, I would go right to the cupboard, get something to eat right away to take that edge off. And then I would have a full blown meal, like at now 10 o'clock at night, and then go to bed within like an hour or so. And it was just like a habit that was ingrained for 17 years and just kept on doing that. And so, yeah, to observe it was amazing. And I kind of was able to finally turn that around at that point in my life, even though I still had food issues. But it was an amazing thing to just observe, like you're saying.
And I think the thing there is really key that you've highlighted so beautifully in what you just said is that it's so important not to judge ourselves, right? So because if you're an emotional overeater, the more you judge, the more you want to eat.
Right.
It doesn't help, right? So
we don't want to be judged by anybody else, but yet we do that to ourselves.
Yeah, so the more you judge and people try to fuel these weight loss efforts and this change with negative emotion, and it doesn't work. It's like, because as emotional leaders, we all want to. We lost you. You still there? Oh, we lost.
I'm not sure.
Oh, I lost you for a second. You're back now. So as emotional overeaters, it's going to, any additional stress is going to make us want to eat. So what we have to do is do exactly what you said, is that just that curiosity, develop a gentle kind of curiosity and just notice what we're thinking and what we're doing. Because, this isn't personal to us. Most people are struggling with this issue. So it's just a quirk of our brain that we want reassurance and we want to calm down. And so what we're looking for is, just to be aware of what's going on in our minds with curiosity, like you say, almost like we're observing ourselves from like we were an alien from another planet kind of thing.
Right.
It's just fascinating. What am I doing?
Right. Exactly. I'm just wondering too, with your coaching, what is the most frequently asked question? What do you most see? Is it grief, or is it, like you said, boredom? What is it that you see that people, really struggle with the most?
There's a few different types of eating that we talk about. We talk about just mainly it's a way of kind of checking out. And like in our coach school, we talk a lot about buffering, which is any kind of emotion just taking the edge off, right? So it kind of buffers it. It stops it back. So it could be something that's sort of like just kind of checking out. The main ones is like any negative emotion, like we certainly want to stop that. So for a lot of people, anxiety is a big thing, and just having a generalized kind of sense of anxiety. But the other ones that are really common are loneliness, just feeling very lonely or very wanting a social connection and not having that in your life. Or, stress from work and wanting to wind down. So there's different motivations, but it's all kind of the same. It's like not being comfortable with experiencing a negative emotion and then finding food is a way of checking out. And once we stop doing that, we can start to feel, sometimes it can be quite confronting because we're actually feeling a lot of emotion that we didn't feel. So like, as I was saying to you the other day, I feel bored more often than I ever did before. So I feel bored, I feel restless, I feel antsy, and it's meant that I've had to do a lot more with my life. I can't just sort of, go to food to be the thing that keeps me occupied all the time.
So do you replace that boredom instead of eating with something else? Is that a good strategy, do you think? Or does that lead to another, problem? Let's say we take up shopping.
This is what I call the whack-a-mole, the whack-a-mole game, which is where you get the person who stops overeating and then they notice they're drinking a little bit too much. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. And then you get the person who stops doing those and then they're online shopping a lot. And then they notice, I got a problem with social media.
I know.
But, in a way, then you just learn, okay, what is a wholesome thing for me to be doing with my time? And things like, people say, and I said this to you the other day, it's like people say, I'll have to take up dance again, and this is somebody who hasn't danced in 30 years. Yes, you will have to take up dance. That's the most sensible thing I've heard you say, Well,
it's kind of interesting because I used to smoke. I mean, years and years ago, like 40 years ago. And the thing was, I found I had so much time on my hands because I wasn't smoking, like, because I would smoke outside.
Yeah.
And I had to I had to occupy my time. I guess I never even thought about that till just now, that you do kind of have to take in that gap.
Yeah, you
Or
do.
just,
It leaves you with a lot of free time. And that's things like all those passions. Once we get over this sideshow, which is this kind of playing around with food and losing weight and gaining weight and not doing this and doing that, and then once we get it bedded down and we're really consistent with it and we resolve those issues, we have a lot of time for our other interests and
yeah.
things like literally, hobbies, crafts, all those things are kind of wholesome things. And because I think what we're looking for in food is a kind of, most of the time it's these concentrated food which give you an artificial sense of stimulation. It's not a wholesome sense of stimulation. It's concentrated white sugar kind of thing. And so social media is a bit like that too. It can be, in small amounts, fine, but if it is a concentrated form of interaction,
Yeah.
a more wholesome form of interaction is going to meet with people and spending time with people face to face, and or calling a friend. Those are wholesome forms of interaction. You're not getting all the likes, the concentrated likes.
Right.
You're actually getting real human connection, and some of it's positive, some of it's negative, but we're growing from those kind of interactions rather than just scrolling.
Right.
So
And I
there.
would even say that as a strategy, like, I know that, speaking for myself, this is before COVID, going to events, I would make the mental note to say, when I'm at the event, I'm not going to be cruising up and down the table, looking for my dessert or whatever that I used to do 10 times. I am going to actually connect with people. And that was a choice I made beforehand. And it was quite amazing, the conversations that I would actually finish instead of, just a minute, I'm going to, I would actually have longer conversations. I found that I was really being very short with people. I mean, it'd be fun conversations before, but I would make an excuse to go to the table again. And it's kind of hard to observe yourself that way, but it was just the truth that that's what I was doing. Another thing that I really would love your take on is the feeling of being left out. Like when somebody else is having something to eat or something to drink. How do you deal with that? That's not always something, well, I'll just pick up my crochet stuff. I'm actually almost feeling upset and angry that I can't have that right now. Or I can, but I'm choosing not to.
Yeah, I think that there's a period of transition where that is a problem, but I certainly never have it anymore, and which is crazy. I never thought I'd be a person who would say this. Honestly, there is a promised land, people, because I can sit down I go to drinks and I don't drink, I make food for my kids and I enjoy them enjoying it. Like, I honestly just enjoy them enjoying it. So
How long
I've
did
got
that
set life.
take?
I don't know, man. I'm just trying to think. It did take a while of consistency. Let's put it this way. Let's think. I haven't had. It probably took, I don't know, maybe 6 months for me of concerted effort. But I don't know. It'd be hard to say.
I
But
kind
so
of
it's been
got
like
there, but then I had a few setbacks. And so I
yeah,
thought I was where you are, but honestly, I had a
yeah.
couple setbacks. And so I thought, no, I'm not really there yet. I'm still having those feelings.
I think that there's a few levels to it. So the first one is that where you're just on the sugar and the flour all the time, and it's a hormonal reset that you need to do off the sugar and the flour so that you can do the other work of breaking up the food emotionally, right? So you might want to get off that. And then there's a lot of habitual stuff, which is that, like, you're going around the house and
Yeah.
looking for food, and it's just pure habit, right? And then you have to let that habit die off. And then it's a lot of the cognitive stuff about food. So you no longer think food romanticizing thoughts. You just think it's just food. That's just food. It's just, ground up wheat. It's just, you know what I mean? It's not that good. I'm here for the people. I'm here for the people. I love being at the table with the people. Those are thoughts that I've
Yeah.
cultivated over time, that I've cognitively worked on. And now they're just the default. Occasionally I do feel like, oh, if I'm hungry, I will sometimes think, oh man, I would love to have that. But I catch that thought before it gets too far, because that thought actually isn't true, right? So my brain is
Well,
telling
let's
me
walk through that a little bit more, if you
let's
don't
walk
mind, a
through
little bit deeper, because I've heard you say this before early on about
it.
this whole thoughts thing. And I know
Yes,
we talked briefly about thoughts and feelings becoming
yeah,
action, but how do you change that in the moment? Like,
yeah,
how do you suggest to really stop yourself? Are there breathing exercises, or what? How do you do
yeah.
it?
What you do is you notice that you're feeling desire for something, right? And then you just let yourself experience. You think, I'm experiencing desire, right? So, and you label it, whatever it is. You're like, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm having this experience. So you let yourself have the experience in your body, and then you come up with the actual emotion, like desire or an urge. Then you look at where that might have started, right? So, and usually for me, and then the small like that look good, right? Or something small like that. It's a desire producing thought. Then when
Something
I
froze there for a second. So for you, okay, I missed it just before.
okay.
You're
So
thinking
first
about
one,
it. You're
you're
labeling what it is, the desire.
yeah. So you're aware of sitting with the discomfort, right? So you want something. So you allow it to be uncomfortable. Second of all, you create awareness of the sensations in your body. So you just let yourself feel, oh, what is this? What is this? Oh, step two, I'm experiencing like a kind of a desire or craving. Oh, okay. So I'm experiencing the emotion is desire. That's step three. You pick the emotion that you're experiencing. Then you have to think about what it was that you were thinking just before that happened, right? So,
Mm.
and usually it's something small like that looks good, or I deserve a treat, or something like that, right? And then you really look at that thought. That looks good. Now, for me, most NMF right now doesn't look particularly good if it's not written down on my plan. I don't have it. And the reason that I challenge that thought, that looks good, because it's a thought that actually produces desire and isn't absolutely true, right? So then I start to challenge that thought. I'm going to use an example that's from something else that will help explain why that's not true. So you are married to someone and your ex shows up, right? And you remember how attracted you were to your ex, but you
Oh,
go, I do not find him attractive anymore, because you know that that thought, he's good looking, is going to end in disaster, right? So you decide to no longer be attracted to your ex, right? Because you're like, no, 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 I'm in a committed relationship, right? So I'm committed to thinking he's no longer thinking he's attractive anymore. So it's the same thing. It's like you think that looks good, but actually you can kind of change that thought and think, no, that doesn't look good to me anymore, because I'm committed to eating another way, right? I'm actually committed to this new
mm.
thing. So while we think it's true that we believe that other thing, we actually can change what we believe if we're committed enough to it. So that analogy of like is a really good one.
So I'm
Because it's
I'm
like,
going to throw this back at you with an idea. So I'm going to throw it back because I really like this, being able to stop and think, even though, do I do that in the minute of the moment? I don't know that I do, but let's say, for example, I'm at my desk at work and I'm thinking, I want to kick my feet up on the desk. That's my
yeah,
desire. Okay, this is
okay,
the
yeah.
example. This is my desire. And then I think logically, is that the next step?
Yeah,
That would,
you notice that you're
that,
having it's a skill. So like they talk about, John McEnroe used to say, oh, I practice so many times at hitting a ball that for me, it looks like a watermelon coming in slow motion. For
oh,
everyone else, it's like bullets. But for him, he's practiced so much that it's a big object coming at him slowly. I practiced this so much that thoughts for me I am more aware of them. I see them coming and I'm ready to ninja them away,
Got it.
So it's a skill. So you want to put your feet on the desk, right?
So my desire is just to be like, hey, just hang out. But now my thought process is that might be fine for a minute, but I won't have integrity with it.
Yeah.
I know that's not what I'm supposed to do at work.
Yeah.
So I have to crush that idea.
Yeah, so you sometimes it's as simple as nipping it in the bud. Like, it's like, I'm not doing that. No, that's not what I do. So we can shut our brains down sometimes and just redirect like a toddler, right? So it's like, no, we're not doing that. Or sometimes we have to, talk the toddler down, right? And say, okay, no, I really want to put my feet up on the desk. And then you say to the toddler, because you're having a conversation with your craving brain, you say to the toddler, oh, okay, well, let's think about, do we really want this? Do we want to have someone come across and see us with our feet up on the desk? And then what do they think about us? And then, then we imagine what the other person's thinking. And then we kind of go down the whole implication of, oh, well, then I start doing this every day. And, like you can actually start to work with that thinking.
Right. And that came across my mind because I one day saw somebody with their feet on the desk, a lady. And I thought, now, how did you get to that point that was okay? I mean, I didn't say anything. I just thought that was kind of different. But it's like you said, if it became a habit where I don't really care if anybody comes in and sees my feet on the desk. So I know that seems kind of an odd example probably, but with it being extreme, like if you're doing so well on a program and you see something on the counter that somebody left behind, if you have other people in the home, and you're like, logically, why would I want to do that? I think you have to talk a little bit logically, right?
Yeah. And ultimately, where we're going with this is where we have control over ourselves and we can trust ourselves. And we're developing a relationship with the kind of craving parts of ourselves where we're in charge, right? So, so I don't think that those analogies that we're using of the feet on the desk and the X are so crazy, because in all those situations, those are situations where we have standards and absolute kind of control because we developed it over time, because these are things that we would never consider. Some people have affairs, right? So like they struggle with that, but we don't, because, well, I'm assuming, some of us might, and I have compassion for you if you do. But the thing is for those of us who don't have that kind of behavior, it's because we just haven't considered it. We haven't allowed ourselves to go there. We've decided we are one kind of person, right? So it's exactly the same. It's about really developing a sense of I'm in control of myself. And it actually takes quite a long time to foster that kind of relationship where you respect yourself and you follow through on your intentions.
So when you have let's be in a practical, I saw one post that you made about making this a priority. And so this touches on the emotional part, but actually I think it touches on the practical part about the priority of even planning your meals. Like you said, you write down your meals.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So what do you coach on that as far as priority?
For behavior change, it is no walk in the park. So this is a big deal, right? There's a lot at stake when it comes to changing something that gives us such a reward, a dopamine hit like this. And if we feel that we're really in the grip of something that has kind of a hormonal reward, which is dopamine, and it has a behavioral reward, it's wired in there, like it's something we do all the time. And also we have a lot of thoughts around it. Changing it actually takes an enormous amount. This is not for the faint of heart. We know that diets, have a terrible failure rate. So what we want to do is we want to give ourselves the best chance, because we know it's going to be challenging for us. So we have to make that top priority for quite some time before automaticity kicks in. So you can't kind of, and the term is, I'm going to use, sorry, language alert, half-ass it. It's like,
Technical term.
it's a technical term. You can't half-ass it. It doesn't respond well to that. And in fact, there's a great vlog from Susan, which is intermittent reinforcement, which is, I was so glad when she did that, because it's such a, I remember doing this in psychology, back when I did psychology 30 years ago. And intermittent reinforcement is the thing that catches out all of those gamblers. They're victims of intermittent reinforcement.
Yes.
And once you do that, you're really struggling, because you want to keep it, so when we want to extinguish a behavior in behavioral psychology, what you want to do is you want to go for 100% extinction processed, right? So what we're going to be doing is not giving rewards when the craving shows up 100% of the time. Because if we do rewards some of the time, we're actually reinforcing the behavior inadvertently. Mm-hmm. And the example is, say, two people get into their cars on a day. One morning, two people get into their cars, both of them's cars never going to start again. Now, one person's car is always started, and the other person's car has sometimes started, sometimes not. Now, the person whose car is kind of not so great and doesn't, and sometimes starts and doesn't start, sort of intermittently, they're going to keep trying to get that car started for much longer than the person whose car has always run. So you can see the logic, because they think, I'm gonna get the reward if I keep trying. I'm gonna get the reward. I just keep trying and trying. Same with our urges. They will keep trying and trying and trying till we get the reward. And that's what we want to avoid, is actually conditioning ourselves to try to keep craving till we get the reward. So we want to go crystal buzz if you can.
And just a little throw to Sarah Walker, who just did a great little project for me on the Starting Out Bright group page. Mm-hmm. There's a wonderful piece in the file that you can find all of Susan's vlogs. So that is going to be so helpful. But yes, the intermittent reinforcement is a wonderful vlog. I love that one.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to do behavior change, it's great.
I cannot believe our time is really winding down. Let me see, there are some chats here, so I'm trying not to miss anybody.
I can see a question here from Eva. Shall I have a look at, shall I answer that one? Mm-hmm. Sure. It says, do you teach your coaching clients how they are being manipulated by the food industry? Sure do. Yeah. So basically, you're really best staying out of the middle aisles of the supermarket for a while if you're really struggling with this, because those products are, when we start looking at everything having sugar in it, particularly high fructose corn syrup is one of them, and that makes it harder for you. So, yeah.
Right. I mentioned this the other day to you. I really enjoyed a hypnosis by Marissa Peer, and I never felt like I got hypnotized, but the message was, I am enough. And I think that speaks to a lot of my emotion, that I am worthy enough to even do this for myself. And do you deal with that a lot with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to couple this with self-love, right? So that you cannot lose weight or do behavior change from a negative place. So you need to be able to be in that place where you love yourself right now, and you're doing this behavior change because you want to stop the suffering. That's where I come from, is I don't, we can't, you can't loathe yourself and still produce change, I believe, because that's that negative emotion. Negative emotions produce negative actions, right? So then we end up back in that cycle. So I think you have to feel good about your body and still want to change.
What do you think about a positive reinforcement, such as going out for a manicure or whatever like that? Or is it not good to do these substitutes for food?
Look, I think as long as you're willing to feel emotion, so as long as you're willing to process emotions and just let yourself feel sadness when you feel sad or tired when you feel tired, and know that you can handle any emotion, right? So that emotions are just for feeling, right? It does, and then still obviously you still want to have plenty of sources of joy in your life. So I think diversifying your joy and
Mhm.
diversifying your sources of joy can only be a good thing, right? So the
Yeah.
more diverse places where you can get pleasure outside of food is only going to
Well,
help.
well, and I'll just share. I didn't plan on sharing this, but when my sister passed away, she was my younger sister, and I bought this necklace. I actually bought this chain with this pendant
Mm.
that has sister on it, and I will wear it at times, especially on special days that there was a day, but I will just like roll this pendant in my hand, and there's just a comfort to,
Mm.
and I don't know that that makes sense, but even when my dad passed away, he used to wear cardigans all the time, and I went to a men's shop and bought a cardigan. The thing is pretty almost raggy now, but I
Mm.
would wear that and just feel like comfort. So I'm just throwing that out there. Like I said, I didn't plan on sharing
Yeah.
that, but I think that for me anyway, those were positive things. And I'm not even a thing person. I don't feel like I am anyway, but those
Yeah.
helped me,
Yeah.
through some grief, just, throwing it out there.
I think anything that helps you feel like, because obviously that's a connection with another person and an emotional, like a loved one, and both of those letting yourself feel. If you were to look at like the thoughts that go with that, when you're you're touching something that's from your sister or from your father, you're feeling that emotional connection to others, and that's
Hmm.
a really powerful thing, because I think a lot of us, like certainly in the when they some of those things to do with the rat park experiments where they, I think my Susan talks about that, where the rats that are in social settings don't get addicted. The rats that feel connected to others and are in a park setting don't go for the sugar water or the drug water. They just go for the plain water. But rats in isolation will go for the addictive substance. So like when you're
Hmm.
actually feeling connected to others, even via an object,
Hmm.
you're actually making yourself feel like you're in a group by doing
Yeah.
that. I suggest that sort of sounds a bit of what you're doing there, because each
Yeah.
of us is connected to other people. And we need that as humans.
Yeah. I cannot believe it. Really, this time
I
has gone by. But do you have any last thoughts? I know we could go and talk about
know I
emotional
could talk.
overeating and what does it take to be normal to eat. I'm
Yeah.
seeing a lot of thank yous here for
Yeah.
your practical approach. Really, it really you gave us some great pointers.
Yeah.
Um, Michael Pollan, author of Omnivore Dilemma. That was a suggestion. I
Yes,
have not read that book.
he suggests shopping the outside of the supermarket, which I think is great advice for anybody.
Yeah.
It's just particularly if you feel like you're addictable. So there.
So there's somebody here tonight. I know there is someone who's going to watch this video, and they have had emotional overeating for a long time. Can you speak to them for just a minute before we close, Lydia?
Oh, okay. Yeah. The main thing is that your brain is plastic and it can change. And with, just by sticking to it, you can produce really dramatic changes in your brain. And there's definitely hope. It's the main thing is to quit quitting, right? So you really want to quit quitting. You're only failing if you're quitting, right? So that's how you know. And as long as you don't stop, you can keep going. And there's really definitely, change is absolutely possible. So
Well, you take clients, right?
I do take
How can
clients.
somebody get a hold of you if they
You
would like
can
to connect?
Well, I'm in the group, and so you just reach out to me via DM, and I'll book a session for you. Basically, I check with everyone that they're in a place where this would work for them. So we get on a call and I help the person, I get on a free call and I help the person look at exactly where they're struggling. Obviously, sometimes we have people who, they might benefit if their eating is very disordered. They might benefit from therapy or something intervention. But if you're a good candidate for coaching, you can find out more. And I work with people that way. So yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. And I know that you do have a website, Pattison, right?
Yeah, L
.com.
Pattison,
Okay.
Pattison. So just
Okay.
make
But if you're in the Starting Out Bright group, they can just get a hold of you quite easily. So,
yeah.
well, thanks so much, Lydia, for coming out tonight. I really appreciate you sharing your story and giving us some really wonderful tips to really think about this. Not just to be sucked in by our own emotions, but to actually feel them, it sounds like, to observe them and realize that we can change from feeling so gripped with the emotion to doing something pretty profound by making a different choice.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thank you so much, and I thank everybody for coming out tonight. So I'm going to close. Next week is Christy McCammon. So come back for that. She'll be here. And I'm going to close as I do each night. Good night, stay bright, and don't let the bed bugs bite.